What? What is this?
So slow to catch on.
Look at those monsters!
Relax, beautiful.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Typewriter Sessions, and we're back doing Code Veronica. I'm Brett, and as always I'm joined by James.
Howdy!
And yeah, this is the last episode of Season 1. As we've said before, it doesn't mean that we're disappearing for any amount of time. It's just to say that this has come now for a full year of episodes, and we're going to move into Season 2. And yeah, what better way to finish it off with more Code Veronica shenanigans and this doozy of a game.
Yeah, capping off a trilogy of Veronica episodes.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not sure what we're talking about, well, it's because we are finishing off with Resident Evil Survivor 2, Code Veronica. It was stepping into one of the most unusual and often overlooked entries in the Resident Evil franchise. It is a game that sort of sits in a strange grey area. It's not quite a mainline title, but it's not quite a traditional spin-off either. And it's definitely not survival horror in the way fans expect. So it's a game that reuses one of the series' most important stories, but it tells it in a completely different way. And like a lot of these experimental Resident Evil titles, there's far more going on beneath the surface than people give it credit for, or at least acknowledge, I suppose. So, shall we just dive straight on?
Let's just jump in.
Let's just rip off the band-aid.
Feet first, yeah.
Yeah, because I kind of feel it's a little bit like... Our approach to this episode is a little bit like Resident Evil Survivor, isn't it? Where it's just like, There's stuff to talk about, but it's whether or not it's really going to feel truly interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be dragging the depths of our psyche to have anything really, really worth commenting on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've never played the game, have you?
No, so I haven't actually played this game. It sort of passed me by during the PS2 era, and I mean, I don't own a PS2 or a sort of PC that I could capably emulate it on now. So yes, I've never actually played it myself, so I did have to resort to watching watching a playthrough for this one. So I am coming at this game as a relative sort of clean slate, really. So I'm interested to hear, having watched a playthrough of it, I am very interested to hear how this game got made, because crikey.
Yeah. I mean, I actually owned it, and I don't know what's happened to my copy, because now if I want to own it again for my collection, it's going to set me back a pretty penny. Yeah. It's pretty expensive now.
Yeah, that's one of the sort of strangest aspects of collecting retro games, isn't it? That you find yourself often in a position of spending outrageous amounts of money on objectively terrible video games.
Yes, exactly. and it's purely because many of these games were so deemed to be shit. No one thought that they would be of any value or any note, and they've probably all been binned, or a very small amount were made to begin with.
Yeah.
And then they end up becoming these rare collectible gems, and I'm annoyed, but I think... I'm not accusing my ex of stealing it before anyone fucking goes off and says anything. I'm just saying that when me and my ex broke up, a lot of my stuff went into storage, and I moved a lot. I had a lot of stuff to sort of ship around, and I also had to condense a lot of what I had, and I'm really, really sort of kicking myself that I have this terrible feeling that when I was breaking down my collection of a lot of things, that somehow that got scooped up in the middle of it all. I have no reason to believe that my ex understood that, that's going to be a bit of a rare one. I'll keep hold of that. So I'm not accusing her at all of stealing it or anything, but I think that was one of the, at a time when I had a lot of stuff being ferried around, I didn't actually have anywhere to stay. I had to put a lot of stuff into storage, and I think somehow it just got caught up. And I don't know if maybe I even just overlooked it and just thought
these things happen over the when you're creaky old men like we are. Things just slip through the cracks of time occasionally.
Yeah.
There's there numerous things over the years that have just I've spent a frustrating amount of hours searching for in attics and boxes and things
can't find them.
Yeah, things just disappear.
They do. I'm gutted. I'm gutted with that one though, because I was always like quite. I mean, I'll discuss my experiences with the game in due course, but I always remember being like, okay, not a great game, but I'm kind of glad that I own this really rare, weird little thing, and that it's this sort of strange offshoot, and I was always quite happy that I owned it. And I've subsequent years of like moving house and things like that, and I'm always when I put my Resident Evil shelf back together, and I never put my hand on it, and I'm just like, oh, where the fuck did that go? For fuck's sake!
Where are you, my lost love?
Where are you? And I'm so sorry. So yeah, it's just so annoying. But anyhow, so let's get straight in with how this game was developed. So it was a light gun shooter entry within the wider Resident Evil franchise, developed by Namco in collaboration with Capcom, who also handle publishing duties. It forms part of the Gun Survivor sub-series. So, in Japan and America, it's known as Gun Survivor, where here we just call it Survivor, and serves as a direct follow-up to the original Resident Evil Survivor. Kind of. It's not a direct follow-up in the story sense, at least, anyway, but it is a sequel to the Survivor sub-series. But what makes this title particularly interesting is its sort of dual identity, because on one hand, it exists as a home console release, launching on the PlayStation 2, first in Japan on November 7th, 2001, and later arriving in Europe on March the 22nd, 2002. So there was a bit of a gap there. But this game did not get a US release at all. And as far as I can tell, people who were playing it in US were playing Japanese copies.
Oh. Yeah. I mean,
it's unlucky, isn't it? Because from what I can see as well, those playing in playing in America, when they're playing Japanese copies, it's because it's all got Japanese text as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if... I'm more inclined to feel sorry for just anyone that was playing it full stop. Maybe most of America were the lucky ones.
Yeah, that's it. Who really were lost out here? The people who played it and lost all that time playing it, or, the Americans for not playing it at all. Maybe it's us.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe they truly did get the last laugh. To our United States listeners, let us know if you feel like you lost out, or actually maybe you're just laughing at us. It'd be good to know. So it was also developed specifically for arcades using Sega's Naomi hardware, with Namco assisting in bringing the experience to arcade cabinets. However, there is a key distinction between these versions that's often overlooked. While the PlayStation 2 release fully supports light gun peripherals, most notably Namco's GunCon 2, the arcade version does not actually use traditional light gun technology at all. Instead, players control the game using a specially designed 3-axis joystick shaped like a firearm, creating a very different tactile experience despite the similar premise. It's very strange. It's weird. The origins of Resident Evil Survivor 2 can be traced back to a project initially known as Biohazard Firezone, which Capcom officially announced in February 2001. This announcement came as part of a collaborative agreement with Namco aimed at developing an arcade-based experience tied directly to the Resident Evil franchise, something that would bring the series into a faster-paced, more action-driven format suited to arcade environments. However, the concept itself didn't suddenly appear in 2001. In fact, Capcom had been exploring the idea of a Resident Evil arcade title as far back as 1998, during a period when the franchise was rapidly establishing itself as a global success. At that time, discussions were already underway about how the series could expand beyond traditional console releases. It's believed that these early ideas either evolved directly into what would become Firezone or existed as a separate project that was already deep in development for Sega's Naomi arcade hardware. That connection is particularly important because the Naomi system shares much of its architecture with the Sega Dreamcast. There's the very same platform that Resident Evil Code Veronica was originally built for. This technological overlap made it far easier for assets, ideas, and even entire design frameworks to transition between the two, which likely played a key role in shaping the final direction of the project. At the time of its announcement, Biohazard Firezone was still in beta state, actively being refined behind the scenes. Despite this, it was scheduled to make an appearance at the AOU Amusement Expo later that same month, one of Japan's major arcade trade events. Early footage shown during this phase revealed some notable differences compared to what players would eventually experience. Most strikingly, the game's cutscenes lacked voice acting entirely. Instead, all dialogue between key characters, particularly Claire Redfield and Steve Burnside, was presented through subtitles alone. This suggests that the project was still in a relatively early or transitional stage of development, with certain presentation elements not yet finalised. However, the finished and released version of the game still ended up being released with no voice acting and subtitles only.
Yeah, so weird.
Bizarre.
I've genuinely, when I was watching the playthrough of it, I was like, is there something wrong with with this video?
Yeah. It's almost like, you know, when you watch videos of people playing Resident Evil 1.5,
yeah,
it's kind of that thing of like, okay, well, I understand this. It's because it's an unfinished game.
Yeah.
So when you watch Survivor 2 or Gun Survivor 2, it looks unfinished. It feels unfinished because no one's moving their mouths. It's subtitles only. It's just completely devoid of anything what makes it feel alive.
Yeah.
It's a very strange game. Around this time, Capcom also made it clear that the arcade version of the game would not be released in North America. This decision effectively limited the arcade experience to select regions, reinforcing the idea that this was more experimental, market-specific venture rather than a global unified release. Then, just 2 months later, the project underwent a significant shift in identity. Biohazard Firezone was officially rebranded as Gun Survivor 2, Biohazard Code Veronica, which is a fucking mouthful. So, outside of Japan, Resident Evil Survivor 2, Code Veronica. This renaming wasn't just cosmetic, it served a very deliberate purpose. By directly tying the title to Code Veronica, Capcom made it immediately clear that the game was an adaptation of that story, rather than being a completely standalone experience. At the same time, the inclusion of Gun Survivor 2 firmly positioned it as a sequel within the existing Gun Survivor sub-series, which had begun the previous year with Biohazard Survivor. That said, despite sharing the Survivor name, the two projects were not narratively connected. The original Resident Evil Survivor and this follow-up operate independently of one another, with Survivor 2 instead drawing its identity almost entirely from Code Veronica. What this transition ultimately represents is Capcom refining its vision, moving from a more ambiguous arcade experiment into something that clearly fit within the structure of the Resident Evil franchise. It became not just an arcade shooter, but a recognisable extension of an existing story shaped to suit a completely different style of play. In terms of its place within the series, this is the second instalment in the Gun Survivor line, as we've said, and rather than presenting an entirely original story, it just reimagines and adapts the events of Resident Evil Code Veronica. Alongside familiar characters and enemies from that game, it also pulls in creatures from Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, blending multiple elements of the franchise into one action-focused experience. Following its release, the Gun Survivor concept would continue, though not directly within Resident Evil's franchise. The next one was actually Dino Stalker, a spin-off connected to the Dino Crisis series, marking a thematic continuation rather than a narrative one. But I think we'll have to just discuss that on a different episode before we go down that rabbit hole. So, just strange that Gun Survivor 3 isn't even a Resident Evil game. It's like, I'm so fucking confused right now. Anyhow, so when it comes to the story, Survivor 2 retells, or more accurately, reinterprets the events surrounding Claire Redfield's search for her brother Chris following the destruction of Raccoon City. Acting on information from an unknown source, Claire travels to Paris, where she attempts to infiltrate an Umbrella facility. Her mission quickly goes wrong, however, and she is captured before being transported to Rockford Island, the same remote prison complex controlled by Umbrella that fans will recognise from Code Veronica. There she encounters fellow prisoner Steve Bensard, and together they attempt to escape as chaos erupts across the island following the release of the T-virus, and the familiar scenario unfolds: an outbreak, collapsing order, and a desperate fight for survival. So, of course, that's a very fucking thinned out version of the story, because we just covered that in our last series.
Yeah, we don't need to hit the micro detailed version of it this time at all.
Definitely not. We're not going to do that. But this is where there's some slight twists, because upon completing the arcade mode, it's revealed that the entire experience is not a literal retelling of events, but rather a dream, a subconscious replay of trauma. Specifically, this is a nightmare Claire is experiencing after escaping Antarctica alongside her brother Chris, at the conclusion of Code Veronica. Adding further tension throughout the game is the constant threat of Nemesis, which is just ridiculous because she didn't even encounter Nemesis.
Claire literally never met Nemesis.
It'd be better if we had Mr. X there.
Yeah, that would have at least made more sense as like a weird trauma dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, to experience... Don't even make sense.
No.
Here it stalks Claire and Steve across the island, acting as a persistent, almost symbolic force of pressure. Unlockable secret files obtained by collecting hidden gems during arcade mode provide additional context, revealing that Umbrella deployed a replica version of Nemesis to Rockford Island, reinforcing that the idea that this nightmare is rooted in real horrific events. It's just fucking stupid.
Yeah.
A replica.
I have a question. I don't know if this is something that you've maybe got noted down later on, but I had this thought while I was experiencing this and the whole Nemesis thing. So the Nemesis encounter, it's you basically, the start of the level, there's a little timer running down, isn't there, saying time until Nemesis deploys.
Yes.
Is it possible to play through the game fast enough to not ever have to encounter Nemesis?
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, I've got it here. Each area is governed by a countdown timer, and if that timer expires, Nemesis will begin actively hunting the player. Once it appears, survival becomes extremely difficult, effectively forcing players to move quickly and decisively through each section. So, I believe so. Yeah. I believe if you are good enough, quick enough, whatever, the aim really is never to have Nemesis turn up.
Yeah.
So it can be done. So yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Good to know in case you should never play it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to play it. So in that sense, it's not good to know. It's completely useless information for me, practically. But there might be some poor soul listening now who's really intent on grafting their way through a Nemesis-less playthrough of this game.
Yeah, there might be someone out there that was like, what?
Good luck to you if you try.
There's some person out there going, you know what? I was never going to play it because I didn't want to come across Nemesis. But now I know that I can get through it and never come across him. I'm going to give it a go. Yeah. So that might happen.
Yeah, I'm going to now intentionally play this game to not experience part of it. I wasn't going to play it at all, but now I'm going to play it just so I can not see all of it.
Yeah, now you say it like that, I kind of say.
No, I genuinely believe that there are lots of people who that is like a real mentality.
Yeah.
I mean, speedrunning in general is sort of like you are going out of your way to see as little of a game as possible.
That's true. That's true, yeah, I suppose. Yeah. like speedrunners, it's not my thing. I've said this before. I might even said it before on this podcast, to be fair. But I just hope that people who speedrun the game have actually taken the time to enjoy the game as much as you can. I mean, I suppose you maybe would have to know how to get around it so quick.
Yeah, you would hope that the sort of the speedrunning community, like they would, like, you have to learn a game first, don't you? Unless you're literally just like watching tutorials on how to like
get through it as quick as
trigger
possible.
every exploit and glitch possible to get past a game as quickly as possible.
See, I always think speedrun. How has this become a speedrun podcast? I really,
because we're talking about a game that's like half an hour long. That's why.
So this is all filler. Yeah. The thing is, this will be the last thing I'll say on speedruns. But I always think it's only really, for me, I know that there are different ways of measuring speedruns and times, and I don't really, I aren't fluent in what they all are and what they all mean. But for me, it's only really a speedrun if you play the game as it was intended and you're not using glitches and hacks and things like that. I think if you're using glitches and hacks to get through it as quickly as possible, for me, that don't count. I think using genuine skill to get around obstacles, maybe someone would argue that that's technically the same thing, but I think when you're using a flaw within the game to your advantage, for me, that don't count.
Yeah, if you've figured out or have seen someone else figure out that if you walk to this certain part of the map and walk into a piece of geometry from a very specific angle, you can fall through the floor and like
get to the end of the level.
Circumvent 90% of that level. That's sort of missing the point of it, I think. Yeah.
And it's things like that where I'm like, don't feel like a speed run, because to me it just seems like you've cheated, you know.
It's horses for courses. People should enjoy games how they want to enjoy games. Speedrunning, not for me.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking to someone that it very regularly takes like 3 months to finish like a 10-hour campaign in something. So like I'm like the absolute other end of the spectrum to speedrunners.
Yeah. You're literally playing 1 hour a week for 3 months to get through a game. Yeah. Well, but as you say, you're absolutely right. And I do agree. You like any medium, you get what you can out of a game or whatever it is. And you play it the way you want to play it. You go ahead. But like you said, not for me. So in terms of gameplay in Survivor 2, it's divided into 2 primary modes. You've got arcade mode and dungeon mode, and both of which can be played using either the light gun or a standard controller. In arcade mode, the objective is straightforward: escape Rockford Island. The experience is broken up into multiple stages, each requiring players to locate a key item and defeat a boss in order to progress. Along the way, players face a wide variety of enemies drawn from across the Resident Evil universe. A key feature here is the partner system. Players are accompanied by an AI-controlled companion, providing support during combat. The pairing is fixed depending on your character choice. Selecting Claire assigns Steve as your partner and vice versa, so if you're Steve, you get Claire. And we've obviously already discussed the time limit mechanic within that mode as well. So the next mode is dungeon mode. Now, by contrast, this strips away the narrative progression completely and instead focuses on endurance and scoring. So here, players face continuous waves of enemies in a format that closely resembles a survival sort of horde mode.
Yeah.
Progression still hinges on defeating bosses, but the real emphasis is on performance, specifically how efficiently players eliminate enemies. A combo system plays a central role. Each defeated enemy triggers a short window in which the player must defeat another enemy to continue the chain. A little bit like Mercenaries, I suppose. Successfully maintaining this momentum increases the combo multiplier, significantly boosting the final score. This system rewards both speed and precision, encouraging aggressive, accurate play. Before entering dungeon mode, players can choose a loadout of 3 weapons. Some weapons are shared between Claire and Steve, while others are character specific. For example, heavier weapons like the Magnum or grenade launcher are restricted depending on who you select. In terms of unlockables, when it comes to unlockable content, Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica offers a surprising amount of progression-based rewards across its different modes, giving players an incentive to revisit the game and push for higher performance. It's not much of an incentive, though. It still is what it is. It's not really an incentive.
No.
Starting with arcade mode, one of the key progression systems revolves around your AI partner. After completing the game once, your partner's effectiveness is upgraded, increasing their level to level 4. If you complete the game a second time, that level can be pushed even further, all the way up to level 8, significantly improving their usefulness in combat and making subsequent runs more manageable. Hell of an incentive. So, beyond that, the game also encourages thorough explanation. Hidden throughout the various stages are scattered messages, and collecting all of them unlocks a secret report, which then becomes accessible from the title screen. This adds an additional layer of replayability, rewarding players who take the time to search every corner of the environment rather than simply rushing to the exit. Obviously, the more you hang around, the more you've got the threat of Nemesis turning up. Another progression system ties directly into total playtime. The longer you spend in the game overall, the more forgiving it becomes in terms of continues. Once a player surpasses 2 hours of total gameplay, their available continues increases to 6. Reaching 4 hours doubles that to 12 continues, and for those who invest a significant amount of time exceeding 12 hours, the game removes that limitation entirely, granting effectively infinite continues. It's a system that subtly balances difficulty with player commitment. I mean, whoopee. I mean, it's got to be good to start with for you to want to go back and back and back.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you wouldn't continually sink more and more hours into a game if it was shit.
No.
And
the very idea that the developers thought, do you know what? Someone might spend like 4+ hours playing this campaign. Let's reward them with infinite continue so they can keep playing it forever.
So they can just play it on loop.
I mean, as 4 hours.
4 hours for a game that can be completed in half an hour.
Yeah. There's completionism, and then there's just like that's
addiction.
You'd have to be trying to play it badly, I think.
Or just straight up addicted.
Well,
that's all I can think of. It's like that you must love the game that much you will keep playing it and playing it and playing it. But I can't see how a game like this could be that addictive. Like, can I say that through experience of playing it, was it leaps and bounds above Survivor 1? I kind of felt like it was. Does that sound like I'm being super generous? Maybe it does. But then at the same time, like, I don't see how you can get 4 or even 12 hours worth of gameplay out of a game like this. It's just simply not possible. It's just not possible. So, anyway. Moving over into dungeon mode, the unlockables become more performance-driven, and in some cases, significantly more demanding. To unlock Chris Redfield equipped with an infinite linear launcher, players must complete a 6th mission within an area, a task that requires both efficiency and mastery of the mode's mechanics. For those looking to unlock Rodrigo Juan Varavel as a playable character, armed with nothing more than a combat knife, the requirement is even more intense. Players must clear every dungeon mode level in the game, including the notoriously difficult Inferno area. It's a challenge designed for completionists and highly skilled players alike. Meanwhile, unlocking the linear launcher for Claire and Steve requires a massive score threshold. Players must accumulate more than 300 million points, demanding not only survival, but consistently high combo chains and efficient enemy elimination across multiple runs.
Can I just stop to point out how ridiculous it is that so many of these unlockables are sort of tied to like playing as different characters, when you're talking about a first-person light gun shooter in which the only time you ever actually see your character is in cutscenes.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just see some slightly different hands.
Yeah. What? You don't even see the hands because you don't see the gun, do you? Because it's just a reticle on screen because you're shooting.
Does the guns not pop up every now and then in Survivor 2?
I don't think so. I thought you see them as you collect the new weapons. But
Right.
I don't remember because it's not an FPS by that.
No. I didn't know
sort of standard, is it? I thought it was just like a classic arcade shooter. You just have the screen and it's just your field of vision. You don't see your weapon in your hands.
You could very well be right. Maybe I'm just not remembering
I could be wrong.
I
mean,
let me have a look. Yeah, you can see the hands.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's
Oh well, I do apologise for getting that wrong, but even still,
no, it's fine. It's all good. But still, at the end of the day, that's literally all you're seeing of the character.
Yeah.
It's literally their hands. So you're getting these different characters and everything, but it's not much of a cosmetic thing, is it? So yeah, there's Claire with her little brown gloves on. There's Steve with his dual golden Lugers and his funky wristbands. So but yeah, it's not much of an incentive to need a different. Oh yeah, well I'll have a different set of hands to look at. That's exciting. That's fucking terrible, absolutely terrible. So finally, there's versus Roach mode. Oh, what the fuck? A more unconventional addition to the game's unlockable content. If you're wondering what the hell versus Roach mode is, well, I can't blame you. Another of the more unusual and often overlooked additions to Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica is the Roach mode, and a game mode that shifts the focus entirely away from traditional enemies and instead challenges the player to survive against swarms of cockroaches.
Ooh.
Not the roaches! So, this mode is unlocked after completing a single mission in dungeon mode, making it relatively easy to access compared to some of the game's more demanding unlockables. However, that initially sounds like a novelty quickly becomes a surprisingly intense and escalating challenge. Once inside versus Roach mode, players are given the choice of controlling either Claire or Steve, and from there they are allowed to select any weapon from the inventory, all of which come equipped with infinite ammunition. This immediately removes the usual resource management element found throughout the rest of the game, shifting the emphasis entirely onto survival, positioning, and reaction speed. The mode itself is structured across 5 progressively more difficult missions, each one introducing a new layers of pressure. At the beginning, players are given a 5-minute timer, but with each subsequent mission, that time limit is reduced by 30 seconds. As the clock becomes tighter, the intensity increases, not just through time pressure, but through the environment and enemy count as well. With each new mission, the size of the room expands, and the number of cockroaches swarming the player increases significantly. What starts as a manageable scenario quickly spirals into chaos, with movement becoming more restricted and escape routes harder to maintain. By the 4th mission, the situation escalates further with the introduction of moths, adding a new aerial threat that forces players to divide their attention between ground and air. Then in the 5th and final mission, the difficulty spikes dramatically. Seekers are introduced, mechanical enemies capable of firing lasers across the room. These attacks deal heavy damage and drastically increase the danger level, turning what was once a frantic survival mode into something far more punishing and unpredictable. Successfully clearing all 5 missions rewards the player with the Panzerfaust EX, a powerful weapon that becomes available for use within the Versus Roach mode itself, offering a tangible incentive for those willing to endure its escalating difficulty. I mean, incentive, yeah, but if you've completed it, I don't really know why you'd want to go back and replay it. No. If you simply just want to replay it for the fun of being able to just blast away with a rocket launcher, then go for it. It does stand as one of the most powerful and rewarding weapons available in the game, though accessing it requires a considerable amount of effort. This weapon functions as a rocket launcher equipped with heat-seeking capabilities, meaning its projectiles are able to track targets after being fired. This makes it exceptionally effective in combat, particularly in high-pressure encounters where precision can be difficult to maintain. Against boss enemies especially, the Panzerfaust EX proves invaluable as its tracking rockets significantly reduce the margin for error and allow players to deal consistent heavy damage. However, despite its strength, this weapon is not universally available. It can only be used by Claire and Steve, reinforcing its role as a specialised reward than a standard piece of equipment. Unlocking the Panzerfaust is tied directly to the Versus Roach mode, one of the game's more challenging side modes, and that's basically it. You know, you can only use it in that game mode. So it's not
fun.
so that's it. So it's not like, okay, well, I've unlocked that now, I'll go use it in some of the other game modes. It is literally, that's it. What's the point?
What is the point?
In terms of reception, the game saw a particularly strong performance in Japan's arcade market. According to Game Machine, a publication that tracks arcade performance, Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica was listed as the most successful dedicated arcade game of the month in their August 14th, 2002 issue. A clear indication that, at least within arcades, the game resonated strongly with players. When Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica launched on the PlayStation 2 in 2001, the reception was at best lukewarm, and in many cases outright negative. Critics were particularly quick to point out the game's stiff and often unresponsive first-person shooting mechanics. Unlike the more refined and atmospheric gameplay the mainline Resident Evil titles were known for, Survivor 2 leaned heavily into its arcade roots, and not always to its benefits. The controls, which were designed to accommodate light gun peripherals, didn't translate especially well to standard controllers, leaving the experience feeling clunky and imprecise for many players. Beyond the controls, reviewers also criticised the game's overall structure. Its arcade-style design, with segmented stages, time limits, and a heavy emphasis on repetition, made it feel far more limited in scope compared to the sprawling, narrative-driven survival horror experiences fans had come to expect from the series. For many, it felt less like a meaningful entry in the franchise and more like a stripped-down reinterpretation.
Yeah.
That perception was only reinforced by its release strategy. The game was never officially launched in North America, which significantly reduced its visibility in the Western market, and as a result, mainstream coverage was relatively sparse compared to other Resident Evil titles. However, in regions where it was released, particularly across PAL territories and in Japan, the general consensus among critics and players alike was that the game felt like a cash-in. While it carried the Resident Evil name and borrowed heavily from Code Veronica, it lacked the depth, polish, and innovation that defined the main series, leaving it viewed as more of a side experiment than a true continuation of the franchise. To further summarise this, it does not even have a metric score because not enough critics' reviews and scores are available to generate a score. But user Metacritic scores have settled on a grand old 3 out of 10.
That sounds fair, I think.
More than fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of quite interesting, really, that there's not enough sort of critic scores and reviews out there to even generate a score for Metacritic. You know, it's I guess that just sort of says it all, doesn't it? Really.
Yeah. I mean, it's a game that clearly they just shouldn't have bothered with a home port.
No.
As an arcade experience, it makes sense. A game that you can clear in half an hour. If you know what you're doing, that sounds like an arcade shooter to me. It sounds like the kind of thing that you'd have fun with when you're out bowling with your mates and you see, oh look, there's a Resident Evil arcade game. That looks fun.
Yeah.
That'll kill 5 minutes while we're waiting for everyone to change their shoes.
Yeah.
And that's about it. It did not deserve to be punted out to the home market, I don't think. I think there's,
And also, if they were gonna like do a home release of it, then the game, if they were going to do an arcade game, with the intention that, okay, we'll also put this out there as a home release, just make it an on-rail shooter.
Yeah.
You know, just do a Time Crisis or a Virtua Cop on it.
Yeah.
You know, and just have it as a light gun game. What would be the problem with that? If you're that desperate to do a first-person fucking shooter game for Resident Evil, just put it on rails.
Yeah.
We know this game isn't going to be canon. You know, it's so what difference would it make if you put it on rails? That's what they should have done.
Yeah.
I don't understand the point of doing this stupid fucking hybrid where you get to sort of control it as well. It's like it's so weird, isn't it, that they've just been obsessed with trying to make Resident Evil first person, like from the get go.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but okay, maybe it was originally envisioned as being a first person game, but you switched it to third person because of development constraints. But you stumbled upon, dare I even say accidentally, a model that has proven to be extremely successful. Yeah. Why are you so fucking obsessed with going back to first person? and they just keep trying and trying and trying.
But never in, like, they've never actually tried to just make it a straight first person action horror experience. It's like up until they finally cracked it with 7.
Yeah.
Every attempt to make it first person with these awkward, like you said, like hybrid, light gun games that weren't made with love and care.
No,
to put it kindly.
Yeah,
they went. So there's no reason. There's no wonder why it took Capcom and the Resident Evil franchise to like really like nail the first person thing, because it took another decade and a half nearly for them to actually just make a straightforward first person game.
FPS almost. Yeah, that's it. And dare I even say it took them, well, it took a lot of other games to have been made in that genre from a first person perspective to be made for Capcom to almost realise what they should have been doing if they wanted to make a first-person game to start with. Yeah. When you had games like PT and things like that.
Alien Isolation.
Exactly. All these games that were like just fucking brilliant from a first-person perspective. It's almost like they had to happen for Capcom to go,
right. That's how you do it.
That's what we've been doing wrong.
Yeah. But no, I think going back though, I just think broadly, I think, the light gun games on a games console were always like, I loved playing Time Crisis on the PS1 and I love playing Point Blank.
Yeah.
But like you could count the number of like actually successfully ported arcade light gun shooters on a console on like one hand. Do you know what I mean? Like most of those games were not designed to be experienced on, at this point in time, I would wager that like a vast majority of people were still playing their games on probably like a 14-inch CRT in their bedroom. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not. That's that's how I was playing my games. So like, these were not the ideal circumstances for these light gun shooters, and a lot of other games that were made for the arcade never made it to the home console, and that's probably the right call. No one tried to bring like a Silent Hill arcade game to home machines.
No, exactly.
For a very good reason.
Well, I think the Tomb Raider had a arcade light gun game.
Did it?
Yeah,
I don't even think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, really big fucking unit as well. Like had like four player co-op, I believe. I'll have to pull up an image for you to see, but I've seen it, played it, it's great. But did I play it and think this would be great? Playing this at home. This is, I need to play this with my controller. I never even fucking crossed my mind. I was just like, oh, this is a cool little, spin-off. In the current Tomb Raider franchise, like based on those recent remakes that they did, and it was great. It was that same sort of graphical style, and I was like, yeah, this is great. But not for a second did I be like, get this on home console with a light gun right now.
Yeah.
It just didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
And
funnily enough, we've I haven't perused your notes ahead of time, so I don't know if you mentioned this, but we've come full circle now because Capcom just launched a Resident Evil 2 remake themed arcade game.
I believe they have. This isn't something that is in my coverage, to be fair, but yeah, I do believe that they have just done a Resident Evil 2 remake as a light gun game. I do believe you are indeed correct on that one, and we'll come to that. Well, we'll have a look at that in a second. But very quickly though, before we move on, and we're sort of like we're pretty much coming to the end now anyway. But you said about like counting games on one hand that have at least translated from the arcade cabinet into home consoles. Give me your 5. I mean, I don't even know if I know 5.
In terms of like light gun games, I mean, like I said, definitely Time Crisis, definitely Point Blank. They were both loads of fun. On the PS1. I don't even know if I can.
House of the Dead.
House of the Dead. Yeah, I guess House of the Dead worked. But then, like my favorite of that series was never an arcade machine, which was the Overkill.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Which I don't believe that ever had an actual arcade counterpart. I think that was only ever a Wii game, wasn't it?
Yeah, you might be right about that actually.
But no, yeah, I suppose I'll give you House of the Dead. Virtual Cop, probably
100%. Virtual Cop 1, 2, and 3, all fucking fantastic games. Had them on the Sega Saturn with the light gun peripherals for that. Yeah. Incredible games.
Yeah, I was going to say there was the light gun portion of Die Hard trilogy that was never actually an arcade game, was it? Because the Die Hard arcade game was it was a brawler, wasn't it? It was like a It was like a 3D.
It was
sort of beat 'em up.
Great game as well.
Yeah, I loved that.
I had that on the Sega Saturn, and yeah, great game. I did like Die Hard arcade, but yeah, the sort of light gun mode in Die Hard trilogy was just for
the console.
For the console, yeah. And I actually can't think of a 5th. Virtual Cop, House of the Dead,
Time Crisis, Point Blank.
Can't think of a 5th.
I don't know. One of like the Cabela's Big Game Hunter games, maybe.
Yes, yeah, gotta be. It's gotta be that, hasn't it? Yeah. You know what? I can't even. That's a shame that as well because I used to love a light gun game.
There was never a home light gun version of the Terminator 2 game, was there? The one where it had like the machine guns attached to the cabinet.
And you know what? I think that might have even come out on the Mega Drive or something like that. Oh, Duck Hunt.
There you go. But again, did that ever exist in the arcades? Was Duck Hunt an arcade game?
Shit, no, it won't.
No.
Great game though.
Yeah, I mean, classic of the genre.
Can we at least just give Duck Hunt an honourable mention?
Let's give Duck Hunt.
Yeah,
I think we've probably pondered on this too far, but it just shows you how much we've got to actually discuss about Survivor 2.
Yeah, that's how interesting
we've had a 5-minute detour into.
That's how interesting this subject is. We'd rather talk about that. So, as you'd expect, finding sales figures for this was very difficult. The release of the game being limited to Japan and European zones did not help its low selling figures, and the best I was able to find was that it roughly sold between... Oh my god. It sold between 119 and 120,000 units.
That's not much of a range, is it?
No. With Japanese release accounting for the vast majority of those sales figures. Yeah. So what about the game's legacy and its placement within the Resident Evil history? Well, this is where things get sort of really interesting because fans over the years have found details that aren't immediately obvious, which sort of tells us that there's a base of fans of this game that see something in it, that it's like a bit of a rare and unique gem within this sort of offshoot of the franchise. So Players have discovered that certain enemies have inconsistent hit detection, which wasn't intentional within the game's design, but has become part of the game's difficulty and charm.
Yeah.
So, like, the hitboxes have, like, different patterns and things like that, which is a bit strange. Enemy spawns are often tied to player position and time spent in certain areas. So this is meaning players have learned they can manipulate encounters if you understand the system and the patterns. And certain weapons, particularly the shotgun and the machine gun, are far more effective in combo chains, which has led to score maximizing strategies being discovered by players over the years. So it is these sorts of discoveries that kind of makes it feels like there's a fan base out there where people treat this as just a fun shooter, which happens to wear a Resident Evil skin rather than some kind of serious entry into the series. And if you can get past that, it's a game that can be mined for some level of fun and enjoyment and a challenge, rather than sort of like getting really bogged down in the sort of, well, it's just a really shit Resident Evil game. You know, it's that thing of just treat it as a bit of fun and don't pay it too much mind that it's a Resident Evil game. So, overall, Survivor 2 stands as this unusual but fascinating entry in the Resident Evil catalogue. It takes a story-driven survival horror experience and reshapes it into a fast-paced, arcade-style shooter, while still maintaining connections to the broader narrative through its dreamlike framing and familiar characters. It's not just a retelling, it's a reinterpretation, filtered through action, memory, and psychological aftermath, is what we are led to believe. But that is all for our coverage of Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica. I perhaps could have gone in a little bit more into depth with some of that, the health system and everything, but to be fair, there's not a great deal to discuss.
It's a very simple and straightforward game.
It's not very elaborate. There's not much to it. If I did sort of go into it, well, I started to, and when I was writing it, I was like, oh, well, I'll explain what the game sort of looks like and how it plays and things like that. And I thought, well, I just kind of feel like I'm really just going over this title, and it kind of felt like I was forcibly trying to make it a bigger episode than it needed to be. It is extremely basic.
It is. Visually, it's just mostly reused assets from Code Veronica. It's not.
It is.
There's nothing to shout about in terms of its look. It is literally, it's all the same character models. It's all the same.
I mean, bearing in mind that the Code Veronica has a hidden first-person mode in it, so when you play that and then you play the Survivor 2, it kind of feels like you're getting just a little bit more of what you've kind of already had access to.
Except Survivor 2 is significantly truncated. It is just very select environments from the original game. Considerably scaled down, and it's a game that's not worth us spending, with all the respect in the world to the people who are tonight, it's not worth us expending our time on this planet on any more than we need to.
And I think the episode, for a lot of listeners, it will just outstay its welcome. I think some people, I think for the most part, our listeners, if we're wrong, then just let us know. But I think for you guys, I think, for the amount of time we've spent on it is probably about as much as you want.
Yeah, drop us a comment if you want Resident Evil Survivor 2 Part 2.
Yes.
where we will just sit and just sort of audibly sigh in frustration at each other for another hour.
Yeah. You know what? If you feel like we've done a disservice and an injustice, and we've glossed over some of the details which really should have been shared and discussed, then by all means let us know. And you know what? Okay, well, I'll go back and I'll rewrite my script from what I had done, and I'll see if I can find an early version of it, and I'll put in some of the details I actually did miss out. But my worry was that people are just going to turn around and go, yeah, this was already going to be, I knew this was already going to be a boring episode, and now you're actually packing it out even more than it actually deserves. So I'm going to turn this one off. So I thought we'd have a nice, concise episode. But if you do want to hear more and you do want to know more, then please, by all means, let us know, and we'll give you some sort of bonus episode of this, and we'll do a Redux version of it if you'd like. So, but I think that is us done for now. But is there anything you'd like to add, James?
I don't think so. I think we diverted into a little bit of general chit chat about light gun games, which was a nice diversion for a few minutes.
I enjoyed that.
I think over the course of the main game, 2-parter for Code Veronica, and then the field report on the remake, and then this, I think at least until Veronica releases next year and we can sit and have a nice chat about that, I think we've said everything we could possibly say about this branch of the Resident Evil timeline.
Well, I think this is the other thing, isn't it? We I started looking at, there's no point in talking about enemies. There's no point in talking about weapons. Literally all of this stuff is pulled from Code Veronica, which we have discussed at length.
We have.
And all of the normal sort of areas that we would cover in a typewriter session, there's simply no point because we've just talked about it for 2 sessions and a field report in some way, shape or form. So I don't think we need to talk about it anymore. No. And we are done with Code Veronica now. Yeah. And when we start Season 2, Episode 1, we'll be moving into the realms of the portable.
Ooh.
And we will be discussing Resident Evil Gaiden. Did you ever play it?
I think I dabbled with it a little bit on a Game Boy emulator a long time ago, but I can't say I've touched it any time recently. So I think I've got access to it. So I think I could probably have a little play around with it before we record.
Yeah, I probably can get access to it. However, I have to admit it's a game I've never played.
Oh, have you not? Oh well. Oh, this will be interesting. This will be the first time we cover a game that you've not played.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. So yeah, this is going to be something. It made it all the more interesting to research actually, because I was like, I really need to make sure I don't miss anything because I can't fill in the gaps with my own knowledge. Through actual play.
Oh, so, well, that certainly will be a treat then.
Yes, it will. And it'll be one of those as well where if anyone turns around and says, oh, well, you didn't mention this and you don't mention that, I can say, well, thank you, because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And but I've done my best to be as extensive with my research as possible. So I hope I do it justice.
I'm sure you will. You're a very diligent man.
Thanks, James.
Oh, right. Should we hit the showers early then, Coach?
Yeah, let's do it. So thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you all for your ratings and your comments and your reviews on the episodes. We really, really do appreciate it. We've obviously done a post recently about some of the amazing reviews that we have had on the podcast. And again, we just want to say thank you to those that have left such kind words about our podcast. It's so good to hear that you enjoy, listening to us and what we do and what we cover. And the way that we do it is exactly the kind of feedback that we wanted, and it's exactly the reaction we wanted you guys to have when listening to it. And it's why we keep coming back and doing it. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate you guys. You've got no idea how much we do. And again, for those who have just found us, or if you've been listening for a while, if you'd be so kind as to leave us a rating or a review, or if you listen on my podcast, on my YouTube channel, if you listen to the podcast on there, thumbs ups and, comments, all this stuff really does help push the podcast into the eyes of new followers, new listeners, people who love Resident Evil just as much as you and might enjoy our podcast just as much as you do. So if you could do those things, that would really, really help us out. And you've no idea how much we'd appreciate that. But obviously, don't feel inclined to do so. But if you could, it really would be appreciated. But in the meantime, we're going to leave it there. Remember to keep your ink ribbons stocked up, people. James is going to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And I'm going to say goodbye as well. So thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you soon for season 2 real soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.